Do you ever find yourself in those moments in life where you wish you could do something bigger? Like there's those moments where there's an opportunity that comes around and you wish you had more resources, or you wish you had more knowledge, or you wish you just had the ability to make an impact. Because, man, what a cool opportunity it would be to lean in, to step in, to be able to make a difference. But often we think we just don't have enough to be able to step in, so we leave it up to somebody else. But what if what you needed was actually already in your hands? I was reading about a man named Brandon Stanton. In 2010, he was fired from his job in finance. He didn't know what he wanted to do, so he bought a camera on Craigslist and went out into the streets of New York and started photographing people. And he thought to himself, well, maybe I'll just take people's pictures and plot them on a map. And he decided that he wanted to start interviewing people and asking them a simple question. What's the hardest thing you've ever been through? And what's your greatest joy? And what he found was people started to answer him. And so he started to take these pictures and he created a website where he put these stories up, and he ended up turning that into an Instagram page. And over the last 15 years, not only has he raised millions of dollars for charity, he's also raised millions of dollars to help those very people in need. And he started with nothing, no job, he wasn't a photographer, he didn't have any skills, but he decided that he wanted to do something with what was in his hands. And God has used him in an amazing way. And I think it's a question I want us to ask today is, what do we have in our hands that God can use? See, the truth is, I think there's this human nature reality that we never feel like we have enough. It's the reason you guys can go eat a ton of turkey on Thanksgiving, that and tryptophan, and later on in the day, feel like you haven't eaten anything yet, right? There's this desire, this hunger for more. And the reality is, because of that, we never feel like we have enough. You can get your hands around some things, but you never feel like you have enough. I never have enough time. How many of you say, I have plenty of time? Like one of you. Truth be, most of you, when you retire, you say, I'm busier now than I was before. Most of you, when you're in high school, you're like, Dad, I don't even have time to do my homework. I'm too busy hanging out with my buddies and playing sports, right? We never have enough time. We never have enough talent. Oh, man, I don't have the ability to do that. Man, I wish I was as confident as that person. I wish I could throw a football like Bo Nix or Caleb Williams or that other guy, right? Like, I wish I had that ability. Or we say, I wish I had the finances. Man, I'd love to jump in. I can't do it. And I think that's a human nature thing. And one of the things that happens naturally is we begin to close our hands. My grandpa, Thomas Met Beecham, was a damsman on the Mississippi River in Clarksville, Missouri. And here's a picture of the dam he worked at. And his job literally was to manage the water flow. He would stop the water, he'd release the water as it needed to move downstream to fill up reservoirs and lakes and rivers. And you know, what a cool job that is. I don't think you realize that we are all in that job in our own lives because we're all closing our hands and releasing our hands. When things come our way, whether it's our money or it's our time, it's our talent, we are always opening and closing our hands. And one of the problems we run into, especially in a culture like we live in an economy like we live in, with inflation like we live in, we don't realize it, but we tend just to clamp down a little more. We tend to look at what's in our hands and go, man, it's not very much. It's not enough time. It's not enough talent. It's not enough treasure. But what would happen if we began to see that when we think we don't have much to offer, took a moment, took inventory of what we actually have, I would guarantee you realize that you have so much more than you realize. See, one of the truths I want us to walk away with today is this, that when we feel like we don't have enough, what feels like not enough in your hands becomes more than enough in his. This is what we're going to talk about today as we jump into the miracle in John chapter 6. If you've been with us, we've been moving our way through a series called Miraculous. And we've been talking about these miracles that Jesus works, that Jesus does throughout the book of John. And John calls them signs. They were road signs that took him along the way from revealing who he was all the way to the cross. And today in John chapter 6, we're going to see that Jesus does one of the most amazing miracles where he turns a couple rolls of bread and a couple fish into enough food to feed 5,000 people. And I think it's a perfect time for us to ask the question, what have we been wrapping our hands around thinking that it's not enough, not realizing that when we put what we have in his hands, it's always more than enough. So, hey, if you have your Bible, I want you to grab those. We're going to be in John chapter 6 and verse 1. I just want you to ask this simple question. What do I have in my hands? What do I have in my hands right now that God could use? And then I want to unpack that as we go. So, John chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. Jesus is been working his way through Galilee into Samaria. He was in Jerusalem. He healed a man at the pool of Bethesda, and then he has this conversation we talked about last week where he's arguing with the Pharisees, and now he's feeding the 5,000. So now he's back out in Galilee, and we're going to see him do this incredible miracle. It says this: after Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. So Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. And lifting up his eyes then, and seeing a large crowd was coming towards him. So Jesus and his disciples are getting away for a little R&R. We see, if you look at the other gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they tell us a little more detail on this, that Jesus had just learned that his cousin, John the Baptist, was beheaded. So Jesus was grieving and he was mourning. Plus the disciples, they had been out on a journey that Jesus sent them on to take the gospel to the surrounding towns. And so the disciples come back and they're really excited. Jesus, let me tell you what we did. And then Jesus is like, he's really mourning, grieving the loss of his cousin. And so he says to his guys, hey, let's get in a boat and let's go to a very nice, relaxing place where we can spend some time, we can debrief your trip, and we can just spend some time praying and talking. And so they start heading towards this area that was on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. So this is really kind of an interesting place. If you guys look at the map here, this area is called Bethsaida Julius. And so it is on the north side of the lake. It's about a 4-mile boat ride across. If you wanted to walk on foot, though, it'd take you about 9 miles to get all the way around that top section. And so this was a place where Jesus was going to go to some grassy ground and relax and kick back and open up a campfire and spend some time with his guys. It was a perfect place to rest. Yet, notice, as Jesus leaves Capernaum and he starts to work his way, Capernaum was where he called home. Capernaum, he starts to work his way that 4 miles up to where Bethsaida was across the lake. He starts to see this huge crowd walking over. He starts to see this massive group of people coming, and Jesus says to his guys, hey, I think we need to care and minister for these people. The gospel writers tell us that Jesus had compassion on them. He saw their need. He saw that they were like sheep without a shepherd. Because people had heard all about Jesus. He had been doing all kinds of miracles and healings and skin diseases he was healing and giving sight to the blind and hearing to the deaf. And here is this group coming to look to Jesus. And when he saw them, he was tired, but he didn't see a problem. He saw people. How often do we, when we're tired and we need some rest, we see somebody calls and we go, oh man, I don't want to answer that. Anybody have that happen? This week, this morning, you're on the way to church, you're like, I don't got time for that. Right? Like we get tired. We need rest. We're worn out. Or we're excited about something else. The last thing we want to do is just push pause on our plans and go minister to somebody. Excuse me, go help somebody. But I want you to notice, Jesus doesn't look away when he sees our problems. He steps in. And there's somebody here, I think, today that probably needs to hear that. You might think that whatever your problems are, whatever your challenges are, whatever you are dealing with, that Jesus is too busy, he's got enough on his plate. No, that's not how Jesus works. Jesus is omnipresent. He's omnipotent, meaning he has unlimited power. He's everywhere, and he's all-knowing. Jesus knows. He knows. And he sees our problems, and he steps in because you are people that he loves. So if that's you today, if you're carrying around something heavy, I want you to know Jesus didn't turn his back on you. He hasn't forgot about you. He sees and he has compassion, and he's stepping in. I want you to notice this, verse 5. It says, lifting up his eyes then and seeing the large crowd was coming to him, Jesus said to Philip was one of his disciples, he was one of the 12. He said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? Okay, so now I want you just to picture the scene. Let's hit pause for a second. I've always kind of thought of this crowd just being a group of people that were just following Jesus from place to place. And we see that Jesus drew huge crowds everywhere he went. But it's interesting as you listen to what some of the commentators are saying, there's a detail in here, is that this was on the Passover, of the Feast of the Passover. And so there would have been thousands of people traveling to Jerusalem from all over. And so what many of the scholars are saying is that this was actually not just the regular group of people following Jesus around. That this was a group of pilgrims heading to Jerusalem for Passover. And as they head through Galilee, they want to get a look at this guy, Jesus. They want to get a look at the guy that everybody's talking about. And so this group, we see it's 5,000 men is what the authors tell us here. And it's been said that maybe it was 20,000 people if you factor in the women and children. We don't know, but we do think that this was a big group of pilgrims who are traveling to Jerusalem. And here's what's interesting about pilgrims or people in those days when they traveled. How many of you go on a road trip and you don't have road trip snacks? Right? Like you take road trip snacks, right? Like I'm a trail mix guy. Any trail mix people? Like M&Ms and popcorn, peanut M&Ms and popcorn, that's Courtney's go-to. Like some puppy chow, you guys know what I'm talking about? That stuff is killer, although you need to take a nap after like an hour on the road. You're just chugging coffee. Like we take snacks with us now. They did too back then. And so they would take food with them. I mean, just imagine you were traveling. It's just 9 miles around the tip of that lake. So you're traveling to Jerusalem. Let's say you're traveling 30 miles. That's going to be you're going to walk 10 miles a day. You get 3 days worth of food. And they don't eat like we eat, right? They ate a lot of bread and nuts and figs and that kind of stuff. But they had stuff with them. So it's interesting. Imagine this is a group of people who hasn't just been following Jesus around like puppy dogs for days. This is a group of people who were equipped, who had food, who traveled, who wanted to see Jesus. And so Jesus looks out upon them with compassion, and he starts preaching. He starts teaching. He starts healing. But then he does something amazing. Jesus chose to feed this huge group of people. But they had food, probably, most likely. They had food. Why couldn't he have done something else? Why couldn't he have brought somebody up front and healed their lameness or got rid of their skin disease or gave sight to the blind? Why did he choose to give them food? See, I think there's something deep here. See, Jesus doesn't just give us what we need. Sure, they were hungry, but he is what we need. See, there's this deep reality here that Jesus is saying to this crowd, hey, you are hungry for something deeper. You are here because you think that I'm a miracle worker. You're here to see that I'm doing all these amazing miracles, but let me show you what you really need. It's me. Later on, we're going to read about how Jesus goes to the other side, and they follow him there, and they ask him for more food. And Jesus says, you guys want me to feed you, but let me tell you, I am the bread of life. So Jesus is getting at this idea. He's setting up this reality. He's going to say, I am the bread of life. I am the source. I am what you need. You don't just need me to give you food. You don't just need me to give you healing. You don't just need me to give you wisdom. You need me. And this is the truth that Jesus is sitting here. I'm not just the provider. I am the source. So look back at verse 5. It says that he lifted up his eyes, seeing a large crowd coming to him. He says to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? And he says this to test him. See, Jesus knew what he was going to do. Jesus always has a plan. Jesus doesn't just walk in and go, what should I do here? Like he is all-knowing, all-powerful. Jesus knows what we need. And so he rolls in. He's testing Philip, though, because he wants to teach something to Philip. So he says, where are we to buy bread so these people may eat? And he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. And notice verse 7. What does Philip say? He says 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. So Philip's like, Jesus, to be real? Like, we don't even have enough money if we wanted to feed all these people. Now, here's what's funny, is 200, a denarii was basically a day's wage, right? So Philip is saying, hey, 200 days worth of wages won't even feed these people, 5,000 to 20,000 people. And so I want you to notice what happens here. Philip, he's relatable to us because he counts the cost, right? He does the math. He's like, whoa, there's 5,000 people. Man, there's no way. Like, I don't even think there's enough villages around here. There's not even enough drive-thrus around here to get enough food for all these people. But yet, he says, it's impossible. See, that's the test. See, Jesus wanted to get Philip to a place where Philip saw that it was impossible. Jesus says, hey, Philip, how much is it going to cost? How are we going to get all this bread? And Philip's like, it's impossible, Jesus. We can't get this. And Jesus goes, exactly. Now watch what I'm going to do. See, Jesus is always taking us to that point. See, it's not that he wants you to be blind in your faith. Sometimes people say, oh, you Christians are just blind in your faith. No. Jesus talks about counting the cost. Luke chapter 14, Jesus says, what king goes out to war without counting the cost? Can his soldiers stand up against the other army? What person goes and builds a tower without figuring out if they have enough money to finish the tower? So Jesus says it's wise to count the cost. But I want you to notice this. Jesus calls us to count the cost, but to not retreat in fear. The reality is, sometimes when we do the math, it leads us to retreat in fear. Sometimes when we do the math, we say, I can't do that, Jesus. I don't have the ability to do that. Jesus, I don't have the time. I don't have the finances. I don't have the talent or the courage or the skill or the knowledge. So I guess I'm just not going to do anything. And Jesus says, count the cost, please, because that's wisdom. But don't retreat in fear. See, counting the cost is not about making the safe bet. Counting the cost is about seeing the size of the task and realizing your need for Jesus. Jesus wanted Philip to see that Philip needed Jesus to do something. That Jesus wasn't just going to go to the store. That Jesus was the only one who was going to step in. And here's the reality. I want you guys to ask yourself. Some of you might be saying right now, man, I've counted the cost of what's going on in my life, and I just don't know that I can do what I feel like God is calling me to do. And the question you have to ask is, are you trusting him or not? See, some of you, God might be calling you to something. God might be calling you to step into a new role, to serve in a new place, to step into a new job. He might be calling you to serve somebody next door or to begin ministering to somebody that he has put in your life. And you begin to count the cost and you say, I just don't know that I can do that. And could Jesus be saying to you right now, you do if you trust me. Maybe some of you are moms and dads and you're saying, it is just so hard to raise these kids. Not only do they not listen, but I don't think I have enough energy to raise these kids. And so it's easier for me just to mail it in. And Jesus could be saying to you, yes, I understand. You've counted the cost. It's hard, but it's worth it. Step in. Be engaged. Some of you might be in a relationship or even a marriage where you say it's completely one-sided. That I feel like all my efforts getting put in, I'm getting nothing back, and I'm counting the cost, and I'm at 100, and they're at 0, and maybe it's just easier for me to throw it in, mail it in, toss in the towel. And could Jesus be saying, yes, now you've counted the cost. You know how hard it is. So let me carry the weight. Trust me. Follow me. Listen to me. Counting the cost is wise. But Jesus doesn't want us to stop at just counting the cost. He wants us to lean into trusting him to fix what's broken and to make things right. Don't miss this. Faith isn't the absence of calculation. It's the courage to trust God when the calculation says not enough. And some of us might feel like we're in a place where we just don't have enough. And Jesus is saying, you don't have enough, but when you put it in my hands, it's always more than enough. So Jesus tells us to Philip. Philip has this inner exchange. Look here at verse 8. So it says, one of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, says to him, hey, Jesus, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? Now remember, people have got baskets of food. But Andrew, I love Andrew. He's always going out. Everybody needs an Andrew in their life, right? He's just going out. He's grabbing people. He's bringing them to Jesus. He finds this teenager who's got a Lunchable with him. And he's like, Jesus, I found some food. It's not very much food, but I found some food. And he brings them to Jesus, and Jesus is like, okay. Now, no, what's funny is I've always wondered, I don't know about you guys, like, what kind of fish was this, right? Just like Captain D's, It's got the little crispies. Or is this like a big cod or what kind of fish were they fishing for? So I was doing some research on this because let's be honest, like if you're traveling, how many of you are carrying around just like a fish, You got like your knapsack and you just got like this fish and your buddy's like, what's that smell? Right? So actually, Galilee was famous for its pickled fish. Sounds good, doesn't it? So it's like sardines, basically. They take these fish, they dry them out, they pickle them, and then they can travel with them. And then they think that the barley loaves was like poor people's bread in the first century. It wasn't very good. It was like an old biscuit that's been sitting out for like 3 days. And this is what he's got, though. He's got this kind of gross fish, and he's got this bread that's not great, but he gives it to Jesus. Like there's just something to be said about, okay, this isn't much. Five barley loaves and 2 pickled sardines, and here you go, Jesus. Do whatever you want to do with them, but notice what happens here. Jesus says this in verse 10. He says, have the people sit down. He says, now there was much grass in the place. Remember, this is a beautiful grassy plain. They were going to relax. And so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. Somebody say, as much as they wanted. The word that they use is to repletion. Somebody say repletion. Repletion, it's the idea of like abundance. Like, you've eaten so much, you're full, you're satisfied, like your tank is full. You're back to 100%. So all these people are following Jesus around. These guys are weary. They're traveling to Jerusalem for Passover. They chase down Jesus. They're sitting out here listening to Jesus talk. They're probably really hungry. They haven't dipped into their packages yet. They're tired. And it says that they ate enough to bring them to repletion, that they were well stocked. Jesus doesn't just give you a snack. He stocks you back to the full. And I love this, verse 12. It says, and when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost. So there's this cool tradition that happened in Israel at the time, is that servants would often get what the leftovers were. So like if you worked at a wedding, you were at a banquet, if you were one of the servers, you probably really didn't get paid much, but you got food. And so, they'd have the wedding feast or whatever it was, a Passover feast, and then the servants would go and they'd have everybody had their basket, right? And they would go and they would collect up food in their basket. And so that was just tradition. So notice Jesus does this too. This is cool. And so he says to his disciples, hey, go gather up the food. We just fed 5,000 people, maybe 20,000, at least 5. We just fed 5,000 people, go gather up the food. And notice verse 13. So they gathered them up and filled how many baskets? 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. And the people saw the sign that they had done. They said, this is indeed the prophet who has come into the world. Jesus showed this miracle, and people started to realize, whoa, okay, everything I hear about Jesus is real. Like he truly is a prophet of God. Not only does he just teach with authority, not only does he do these other miracles, man, he fed all of us. Now, there's so much food left over, there's 12 baskets full. How many disciples are there? 12. So each disciple got a basket. Now, this is cool. Another cool detail. In Jewish culture, no one ever traveled without a small basket. It was called the kafinos. It was a bottle-shaped basket. They would carry that. They would probably hang on a belt. And so these guys would carry that with them all the time. That's probably where their food was at. They would bring hay to put their head down if they had to sleep outside overnight. It was a personal-sized, basically, basket. And so notice, Jesus didn't just provide for the crowd. He provided for his disciples. Each of them had a basket full to take with them. He made so much that they walked away with a personal, tangible reminder that Jesus is the source of what we need. That Jesus is the provider of what they needed. Jesus is a miracle worker, but he always makes sure that we are full. And they started the day thinking, we don't have enough. And the end of the day thinking, we have more than enough because our baskets are full. So I wonder, some of you, you might have woke up today. Maybe this week you had a bill came in the mail, or you looked at the stock market and you said, man, I just don't know that I have enough. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to extend this run that I'm on. But I think Jesus says, when you give me your life, when you put your life in my hands, you let me show you how to steward your life well, what you have is always enough. Count the cost, but don't let the cost lead you to retreat into fear. And I think Jesus wants us to actually spend the time looking at what we have in our hands and saying, okay, Jesus, here's what I have. It doesn't feel like much to me. But when you put it in his hands, it's always more than enough. Somebody say more than enough. I read a story this week about a lady by the name of Katie Davis Majors. Katie was 18. She moved. She took a trip to Africa. She took a trip to Uganda. And she didn't have a seminary degree. She didn't have a platform. She just wanted to go. So she went to Uganda, and she realized that there were so many orphans in Uganda. So many orphans. And so rather than just deciding to adopt one, and she's 18, rather than just deciding to adopt one, she didn't have any money. She didn't have anything. She decided instead to move to Uganda. So her and her husband moved to Uganda. They actually moved down there, and over the course of several years, they adopt 13 girls. She starts a nonprofit where she can help feed, educate, and share the gospel with thousands of people. She's written books on this. And she looked at her hands and said, man, I don't have much. But you know what I can do? I can give God what I have. And that's me. She moved to Uganda, and it's changed the lives of 13 plus thousands of others. I think one of the things Jesus wants you to see in this miracle, in John chapter 6, is that it's not just the miracle about the bread. It's the miracle about emptying our hands and just giving him what we have. And so some of you guys might come in here and just feel like there's not much in your hands right now. But I want you to know that what you place in Jesus' hands will always become more than enough. Hey, everybody put your hands out. Finish taking your notes, and then put your hands out. What's in your hands? Air. But there's so much in your hands. There's so much heart in your hands. There's so much talent that you have. So many gifts that God has given you. So much that you have that you don't realize. In Mark's account of this, Mark tells us that Jesus looked to his disciples and he said, hey, much bread do we have? And they said, well, there's this boy that has 5, but he also has 2 fish. Sometimes we look and we say, well, I don't have much bread. The reality is we've got 2 fish, too. We always have more than we think we have. Our scarcity mindsets cause us to think that we don't have enough. Jesus says, you have enough. This boy with 5 little rolls and 2 fish fed 5,000 people because he put it in Jesus' hand. And so what is in your hand? What are you holding in your time? What are you holding with your talent? What are you holding with your treasure that by simply putting it in Jesus' hands can make all the difference in the world? See, some of us, what's in our hands that we feel like we don't have enough isn't just our time. It isn't just our talent, but it truly is our treasure. We live in an affluent country where everybody around us seems like they have so much. And it causes us to think that we just don't have enough. And so rather than being generous with our treasure, we tend to hoard. We tend to wrap our arms around it because we just don't think we have enough. We have to stack up for later. But what if Jesus is saying, what little you do have is actually a lot. And whatever you put in my hands, I will multiply. I think there's this reality that we see all throughout the Bible, all throughout Scripture, is that the generous giver starts not by looking at what little we have, by looking at how big God is. We see this picture in Scripture that Jesus talks about our giving and our generosity more than he does anything else because he knows that is what takes a stranglehold on our heart. Because nobody is ever going to feel like they have enough. but it's through obedience to Jesus, not through guilt trips, not through feeling like you have to do something, but by being happy to give whatever you can give into the hands of God that leads to a cheerful giver. That word cheerful giver, it actually means hilarious giver. God loves hilarious givers, people that trust him with what they put in his hand. And so right now, I just want you to consider what is in your hand that you haven't trusted God with yet. And if it's treasure, I encourage you to trust him. Because maybe there's no area of growth more significant in your life than the area of generosity. You can read your Bible more, you can pray more, you can go to group more, you can go to church more, but something happens all of a sudden when we start giving to God first. When we say, okay, God, I'm going to live off the 90% or the 95%. I'm going to give you the 10 or the 5 or the 2 or whatever the number is. God doesn't care about the number. He cares about your heart. And when we say, okay, here, God, I'm going to give this to you first and figure out how to live on the rest, boy, we'll talk about growing your faith. Start faithfully giving to the Lord. And so I think the challenge to all of us is this. I think Jesus says if you aren't giving, you need to do. You need to give. And so as your pastor, my encouragement is this. If you aren't giving anything, start small. Just give something. Maybe it's $100 a month, $25 a week. If you are giving, but it's not regular, I think Jesus would probably encourage your heart and from trying to wrap your arms around it more often to start automating it so it's going to come out. So you can learn to live off the rest. You can learn to trust him. How do you trust Jesus? You got to give him something. Time, talent, and treasure. For some of you guys, you might be saying, hey, yeah, I've been given, and I'm starting to really see the blessings that God gives me. I'd encourage you, don't stop. Be faithful. Pray. Ask God. Okay, God, what are you leading me towards giving next? Guys, the reality is that generosity isn't about the amount. It's about the trust behind it. So as we wrap up, here's what I want to say. I want each of you to start my challenge for you this week is each of you to start your day with this. Start your day with some sort of prayer that resembles something like, Jesus, I want to give you what's in my hands. Whether I feel like it's enough, whether I feel like it's a little or it's a lot. Jesus, here's what's in my hands. Take it. Here's my time. Take it. Here's my talent. Take it. Here's my treasure. Take it. For some of us, it may mean that Jesus is calling us into something, and we've been counting the cost too much, but it's time to step in. For some of you, maybe you've been feeling God tugging at you. It's really time to serve your church. Step in. Grab me or one of our elders after church. Grab Kev. Stop counting the cost and retreating in fear. Step in. For some of you, it's your time. You've overscheduled yourself. You don't have any time for relationship with Jesus. Could Jesus be saying, get that calendar right. Schedule time with me in the morning. Step in. Because I guarantee you, when you begin to be generous with what's in your hands, you're going to find it's always more than enough. Hey, let's bow our heads in prayer. I just want to pray for you guys. And maybe some of you are here today. You hear the words of Jesus, and you hear the words that I've shared today, and you're just thinking, yeah, but Pastor Drew, you just don't understand. You just understand what's going on in our world. You understand maybe some of the bad financial decisions I've made, or the decisions that somebody else has made towards my life, and I just don't know what I can do. I just pray this week, just ask Jesus to take your intentionality, to take the attitude of your heart, and to help you to trust him more and more every day. See, the reality is that we're only going to trust Jesus as much as we walk with him. And so let's spend more time walking with him, more time giving to him, more time trusting him. And he'll begin to fill us back up over and over again. So I pray, Father, that in the room, someone here today, this morning, decides to step forward and say, Jesus, I trust you with my time, with my talent, with my treasure. Maybe there's somebody here today who's never made that decision to trust Jesus. And with your head bowed and your eyes closed, I want to give you an opportunity to trust him. To say, Jesus, I believe that you are enough. I believe that you are good. And to trust that Jesus is the one who is offering us a new heart. Because the reality is, if we've been clamping our hands down on what Jesus has given us, then we've missed the fact that he wants to use you as a waterway to pass the blessings to someone else. And so, see today that Jesus is the only one that satisfies our soul. And he's inviting you to stop holding back, but to trust him with everything. So if you've never trusted Jesus, or maybe a long time ago you put your faith in Jesus, today you can recommit your faith to him by praying this simple prayer that I'm going to lead you in here in a moment. It's not the prayer that saves you, but it's the heart behind the prayer. So if you want to say yes to Jesus, would you repeat this prayer after me? Jesus, I am a sinner. And Jesus, I need a Savior. Jesus, save me, forgive me, and show me mercy. And Jesus, it's in faith that I declare that you are my King. So fill me with your Spirit. Help me to follow you and to learn from you and to become like you. With our eyes closed and our heads bowed, if that was you today, you prayed that prayer for the first time, or you recommitted your faith to Jesus, while nobody's looking, would you slip a hand in the air just so we can pray for you? Anyone today? Father, I just want to pray over your church. I want to pray over your people, Lord. Help us to begin to live with our hands open, trusting you with what you've put in our hands, knowing that what we give you is always enough. And we ask this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.